thanks to everyone for joining. First of all, our hearts go out to everyone who's been directly affected by coronavirus. It's a very sad time for many, but we mustn't forget that the restrictions that have been put in place that have triggered the content of this presentation are there to genuinely save lives. So it's a difficult time for a lot of people, but for the rest of us, we have a huge responsibility, I think, to adapt to this new normal and continue BAU for the sake of livelihoods across all of our businesses. So what we want to talk about today is where many events and trade shows have been cancelled over the last few weeks. The likelihood is that this will continue for possibly the next 2 quarters. Who knows beyond that? But in this moment of uncertainty, many companies who have predictable pipeline contribution from events, and LedgerBen is certainly one of them, we have a responsibility to fill that revenue gap. And this is an opportunity to also, I think, to increase sales efficiency. So our opportunity here to better relate our sales performance to the rest of the funnel, to bring sales and marketing closer together, and also to accelerate our drive to digital. For those of you who are close to the leadership of LedgerBen, you know that we've been moving our proposition and developing our proposition in this direction for a little while. In terms of our approach to this, as marketers, we need to be very conscious that just taking our content and turning it and putting it on a webinar, recording the webinar and putting it on a website is not enough, despite the fact that that's what we're doing with this webinar. But this webinar is not here to replace a live event. And this slide is to talk a little bit about what you will actually miss in terms of not attending live events. So what live events? Why can I ask people to go on mute, if that's okay? Thank you, just so, because we're recording the call. Thank you very much. What you get at a live event is that intensity of opportunity. So the opportunities that are saved up, that are driven prior to the pre-event from sales and from marketing, as well as the customers themselves, that intensity of opportunity and conversation that happens at a live event gives us a huge amount of sales productivity in a short space of time, which ultimately drives our conversion. And this is where our predictable pipeline for a lot of us comes from, these events. So for sales, it's about maximum opportunity generation at these events. It's about the compression where possible of sales stages, where throughout those conversations, they can actually accelerate and increase momentum through the pipeline of those opportunities. And also focus on an increased close rate, because people are in market, are ready to buy, and as I say, they're able to accelerate the pipeline. From a marketing perspective, you'll miss out on the data that will feed your marketing nurtures. So those that are not yet ready to buy but are fresh new contacts that normally feed those data-driven marketing nurtures are going to be absent if we don't do something to replace the intensity of opportunities. In terms of productivity, salespeople are able to give that subjective identification of buyer journey stages, which is invaluable to marketing off the back of these live events, because that allows us to understand where and how we can accelerate pipeline. So there's a whole load of stuff here that you just won't get from just creating a webinar or just creating a website with more content that might be live or might be on demand from the website, from the live event. Next slide, please. More importantly, all your customers miss. So when they go to events for industry-leading content, for product information, and also to build and generate those all-important relationships, it's really important from your perspective that you can help them to understand your roadmap and thought-leading content. Sorry, I've got a really bad echo somewhere. Your innovations and questions answered around products and product information, and also that trust and level of trust that they get from building relationships, buying into your brand and into the people, whether they're salespeople or account managers. The building of relationships is important, but it's not just you and talking to you and your business that's important. They really want to get a balanced view on some of those trends in industry direction. so some of that third-party unbiased view from your competitors, from press and from journalists and from the event organisers themselves, if it's not your own personal event. And unbiased product comparisons, so able to look at what the competitors are doing and also have journalists give their unbiased or preferably unbiased opinion. And likewise with your competitors, they also want to understand what they're buying into in terms of the brand and the ongoing support. So there's a huge amount here that whilst webinars can be really great, and so can websites, there's a huge amount here that would be missing if we just as marketers thought that that was all we needed to do to replace live events. We need to really recreate that intensity of opportunity. Over to you, Greg.
Thanks, Andrea. So the revenue response team model was something we launched in January this year, and it's really to show the relationship between marketing, sales, and customer success on how a customer's journey evolves and is managed over time. Where there isn't a clean handoff where it's marketing that gives it to sales and then it gives it to customer success and no one else touches it. This journey is actually now shared throughout all of the journey where marketing plays a role. And within that journey, there's digital touches and there's human touches. Now, marketing primarily plays in digital touches. However, it enables a lot around human touches. If we look at communications around events, which this is primarily built around, marketing enables a lot of that in terms of how does a communication work? What's the key message we want to deliver? How do we articulate that in the best way? And how do we create this experience around the event? And similar with customer success. But what we're seeing now is a shift, and this has been directional for the past couple of years, but it's really obviously being accelerated over the past couple of weeks more than anyone could have thought, where the amount of digital touches and let's say the lifting or the role that marketing plays is deeper into the journey than ever before. And that's because the human touches aren't possible. And this isn't to say that the touches can't be delivered by humans on digital channels, but it's really about what's the starting point of how that's going to be delivered. And that's what we're going to talk through over the next sort of half an hour. Is really trying to understand, okay, what can we do to replace those tactics, those elements that have been removed or now not possible. So if we look at how this breaks down and how we can drive these deeper engagement pieces with both customers and prospects, as Andrea mentioned, it's not just a case of lifting the content and putting the content online, because there's so many elements or facets of events that just don't replicate in a webinar. So some ways that we're looking to be able to recreate that and drive some of those deeper interactions and engagements across these range of tactics. Now, some of them can be delivered at scale. They can be one-to-many like an event is, but equally they can be delivered on a one-to-one basis because a lot of the time at events, it is sales prospecting. It is a prospect or a customer having a one-to-one conversation with someone from the account team or the sales team. And there are elements that need to be created in that one-to-one basis that are really personal, really specific around that buyer's needs. So within the one-to-many sort of arena, we've got, first of all, virtual events. And I think it is important to emphasize, and I'll come onto this in more detail in a few slides, this is not just a webinar. It's not saying we've got this one talk at an event, how do we move this into a webinar? It's looking at the whole experience around the event and trying to recreate as many elements of that as you can online. So lots of the elements that sit on this slide could actually sit in one virtual event piece. But you've got everything from how product demos can work in a virtual environment, how an event nurture needs to support this. And that's everything from inviting them to the virtual event through driving engagement continually through it and looking beyond email. And then also looking at how that works from an event follow-up perspective, where again, you're likely to have more rich data on the people you interacted with because it's captured in a digital environment. Things like looking at live streaming around showrooms, just because you can't do a tour around your exhibition stand, that doesn't mean you can't actually deliver the same demonstrations virtually in a one-to-many. It just happens to be in a different format. Looking at how we can stream some of the speakers that would be at an event, if they're particularly a big draw or people were looking forward to seeing what they were going to talk about. And yes, free swag is a big part of events. Like it or not, people collect stuff there. So could we use that as an opportunity to, again, drive personal experience, or maybe there's a giveaway or a charity angle that we can actually support something that is meaningful rather than socks, which I like to collect at exhibitions when I go. And then the last couple of pieces in terms of partners, so press and channel, which are, again, key participants of any physical event. How can we replicate some of the vital information they receive at events, but do it in a one-to-many virtual or digital environment? And then on the right, we move into the one-to-one pieces. So say this is where we're driving specific sales engagements typically, but in a digital environment. How can we have product clinics? How can we have sales surgeries where people have a specific need that they were going to a trade show to try and solve? They could be Ask an Expert, which again translates to people coming up to a booth or a stand. How can we move that into a digital online environment? And then equally, one-to-one FaceTime or video conferencing with salespeople. How do we make sure those interactions are still happening and buyers are getting the most out of them? And similarly with a live stream around the tour as well. So as we jump into the one-to-many tactics, as I mentioned before, really looking at how we can recreate the intensity of an event, but in a virtual environment. One of the things that this is driven by is having a time-limited availability. An event is a day in a calendar or a week in the calendar, and people will travel to go there. They will block that time out to be as engaged and present while they're there. Whereas with a one-off 1 hour webinar, they won't typically do that. So how can we create that as a time-limited availability where it could be scheduling a week of the calendar where an event used to be, and there's a whole agenda around this where there's specific talks or specific demonstrations at different days and different times of the day to really try and drive that focus. And that helps the buyers to be able to say, well, actually this week I'm going to get those pieces of information and that input. But equally from a sales intensity perspective, they know there's a flashpoint or a focal point to build up for, and they'll have lots of sales touches in a short space of time, which is what we want to recreate. Similar around the experiences and value offered to customers in a digital environment. So some of it's like looking at networking, or some of the conversations I'll have over coffee breaks or at the side of a booth while they're basically visiting the exhibitors. How can we recreate them again? And that's where a webinar may fail to deliver that. But lots of the virtual event platforms have lots of these pieces where they have separate hangout rooms, they have polls, they have interactions around them. So looking to recreate that. The other part is looking at the actual experience that's delivered. And there's features that could be built into an online event that actually are really hard to replicate at a physical event. If you think of an agenda over the course of a couple of days, it's very easy to poll people attending on day one or even in advance of the events to ask them what they would like to see. What information would they like to see more of? Maybe it's something topical about what's going on. Maybe it's about a business challenge or legislation challenge. And we can poll that beforehand and then build the schedule and the event around that. Whereas a physical event, that's very, very difficult to do. Product demos, discussed these already, but one of the key things is actually, could this be an opportunity to reach more people in a shorter space of time? If we're removing time for traveling and we're doing everything virtually online, there could be opportunities to speak to more prospects more efficiently than we have before. So we're not limited to actually transporting technology or people to be able to do a demo if we can do them all virtually or all online. So we may drive more sales efficiency if we're armed and tooled up to be able to do that. The other part is it's easier to rehearse storytelling when you've got some of the digital environments because you can practice it based on a prospect's pain point. You can see that, you can have sales tools ready for that story to be delivered, and it can be delivered far more, let's say, rehearsed than it could be if you're in a face-to-face meeting off the cuff where you've travelled to them or you've met them on a stand. And then the other part is looking at how the follow-up piece works around the product demo, where again, if you've got digital touches around it, it's very easy to then deliver content based on the questions or queries someone asked, if you're capturing that in a digital environment and feeding that back into the wider ecosystem around the events. Virtual product demos are a great way to look at how we can deliver the same experience of a product demo in person but online. Some software already does that. Software companies have been doing this for a while, but if we look at physical products, as consumers, we probably all engage with product reviews online. We'll look at someone reviewing a car, someone reviewing a camera, someone reviewing a phone. How can we take this into a B2B environment and really show how something works and deliver that online? It also allows people to interact in a different way, where they can ask questions around the product. You can build up FAQs around common questions asked or key features, and we can track what people engage with. So through heat mapping or feedback, we can actually capture that in a far more structured way to then improve the demos going forwards, rather than it based on feedback of how someone feels it when they delivered that. Then another part, if we're capturing a lot more of this data digitally in terms of what people are interacting with, what they're liking, what they're engaging with, and what is and isn't working, we can be far more structured in the nurtures that we deliver around this. It's not uncommon for an event nurture to be an invite a month out and then a few weeks and a few days out. During the event, there may or may not be a promotion that says we're at the stand or come and see us around this. But unless you're the exhibit organizer, during the event, it's quite limited. And then post-event, we see it can be quite generic, where we saw you at the stand, here's some information of what happened, and then it's typically left to a sales follow-up. Whereas now, if everything's shifting more digitally in the short term, we're going to have far richer data points about, well, actually, what sessions did people engage with? What products were they looking at online? And we can build far more tailored nurtures in terms of following up that journey after. And equally before, if we can see what people are engaging with during the event, we can promote topics or themes that are interested more to them. Livestream showrooms, this is a really interesting one, I think, and granted it's very challenging in the current environment, but I think over the next couple of quarters, this could be a really great way of getting more scale on demos, where if you have a showroom or a product demo center, that could be something where instead of it's delivered just an exhibition or one-to-one basis with a customer, why don't you actually live stream this? Look at something like Facebook, you can do YouTube Live, you can do it on LinkedIn, or it could just be a webinar format, but some way of actually talking through prospects and customers about the new products and the new product features and capabilities you have. You can also then start to field questions in real time, have a Q&A, have a discussion around it, and equally you can set daily or weekly tour times. I think this is something that I can see going on a lot throughout the year, but especially if you're looking at like a virtual event where you say, right, at 10 a.m. every day for a week, we're going to have a showroom tour. On the first day, it's going to be around this vertical. On the second day, it's going to be around this vertical. And that could be a really nice way of actually delivering that information in a personal way to someone through a digital channel. And then equally from a more of a sales perspective, if someone is engaged, looking at a personal live stream tour. So someone that is interested, they have raised their hands, they have demonstrated like intent. You could then have that sales conversation one-to-one again, looking around a tour or with a product demo, rather than it being part of a larger group. And then the last one, and this is one thing I think is really interesting that I would love to see clients sort of move ahead with, is sometimes keynotes are a big headline speaker and they don't actually relate to the subject area. But I think if they do, it's a really good opportunity for you to have something that's quite unique in the marketplace with someone that was already committed to attending that event. where it could be run as a separate virtual session or as a separate webinar as part of the event. And you still have the keynote speaker, they just deliver it virtually. And they still cover that subject area. And then by association, I think it helps you stand out and differentiate from the competitors there. And it's a really nice way of making the event feel a lot more than a webinar, but actually a virtual event with a combination of product demos, of showroom tours, of keynote speakers, and of product information, and sort of bringing all of that together in the space of a day or a few days to build that intensity around an event.
Okay, I'll take over now and talk about some of the things that really are and do make events that might be more challenging in the digital world. So first of all is free stuff. So love it or hate it, people still like it. It's more challenging to do in the environment we face ourselves in. So we need to find new ways of doing this and think about how we can engage a bit more softly. We can consider it really as part of registration or incentivize joining the event, and even get back to the days of good old direct mail, interacting more physically, sending to home addresses. Virtual happy hours, a staple part of many events, especially in Germany. They're entirely doable. At Ledger Bennett, we've been running the virtual bar 3 times on a Friday evening for different time zones on Zoom, 30 or 40 people across the business. So it can work. We might just need to send beer or wine to key contacts in advance to make them feel part of it all. And of course, given the current situation, we need to think about charity in the community. So it might be that somebody joins the event and we give something to charity or a food bank or something like that. So think around the problem, overcome the lack of face-to-face and look for new ways of doing things. The next vital part of an event is really press engagement, and without that, a digital event might feel one-sided or just too sort of biased. So we need a journalist viewpoint. We want influencers to join the event, and we need them to amplify the message and, I guess, challenge what we're sharing, ask questions, and then share that to their readership. We want comparisons. We want the audience to get what they would get at a live event, and that is the ability to go stand to stand, from vendor to vendor. So we need journalists to do that and help create that engagement. We can still create digital press packs. That's not difficult to do, and we need to then include the journalists in our world. We need to brief them. We need to talk to them one-to-one. We need to tell them the story about our vision, our product launches, the way we're moving forward. One thing that we tend to avoid in live events is students. Now, I've included this in press because it is about amplifying the message. So with students, we can invite them to virtual events. We can think of them as future buyers. At the moment, they're back from university. They might be our future buyers, and they really can amplify our theme. We just need to make sure that sales can separate the students from the serious buyers, and with digital touch points, we can do that. Finally, the channel. Very easy to forget, but a vital part of what many companies need to do. And especially, it's often where sales and marketing really align around a channel, key routes to market. And so therefore, they need to be either part of the event in virtual showrooms or giving a point of view, or we can even dedicate an event to them. Talk to them about our vision, new product launches, get their view of the market, understand the trends, better understand their pains and what they need from us as a vendor. Given that they've got business to attend to, we need to make the best use of time, make it effective, and cover a range of engagement, be it live, visual, video, and give them the opportunity afterwards to come one-to-one and really ask questions and dig deeper.
Thanks, guys. On the one-to-one side, obviously talking to as many people as possible and looking at the bottom of those pyramids is really important. to try and scoop up as many of those interactions as we can. But when it comes down to some of these large-scale face-to-face events, the signing of deals, the one-to-one time with a sales guy, the ability to build that one-to-one relationship and ultimately get that solid conversion and even sign up a deal there and then is critical. So the broad part of the pyramid is important, but equally so is the one-to-one FaceTime. Replacing that looks more like 30-minute one-to-one video sales sessions. There are fewer distractions than at a show, and as has been a theme throughout certainly Greg's section, but the previous sections, the ability to be able to personalize that session, because they're not just walking up to a stand. They can, if you create the right online environment, they can appear to just walk up and ask to speak to someone, but you can pre-schedule these, therefore ask a few personalized questions, try and then personalize the experience, make sure the right person is there with the right level of information to be able to answer all of their questions, whether it's an expert because it's a troubleshooting on existing products, or it's an IT, whether it's a sales guy because it's someone who wants to negotiate around a specific deal, around specific products or portfolio. All of these, you can try and capture some of that information beforehand and therefore really tailor the experience to make it super efficient. The guided sales approach as well. So I think there are various technologies out there that are available to allow salespeople to have some of those prompts, particularly when they may be less familiar with working as we are now on video calls, and certainly when the customers are as well. Really, some will be very uncomfortable with this kind of interaction, yet way more comfortable with talking to someone at a booth or a stand at an event. So being able to focus on coaching salespeople to overcome some of those challenges and learn how to get comfortable with the technology, as much as get the customers and prospects to feel comfortable with the technology, we can take some of the other pieces away, such as the guided sales approach. So being able to talk to customers in a not scripted, but in a very guided way. We can do that. And there are technologies out there that can provide that for salespeople to give them something that feels like a really slick experience. Instant access to high value digital content. The ability to share, whiteboard with customers in real time, bring those experiences to life that you would have one-to-one on the stand, at the booth, at the event, to make sure that we can allow salespeople to really build those quotes and proposals.
Andrea, we're losing a little bit.
That they would normally feel really comfortable getting face to face. Oh, apologies. Is that any better?
It is a little bit better, yes, thank you.
I'll come off video. Is that any better?
Yeah.
Yes, I think so, yes. Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah, so the guided sales approach, giving people instant access to this high value digital content through those conversations with salespeople, the ability to share and whiteboard real time with customers. There's plenty of technology, Microsoft Teams, a lot of us are using that type of technology now, or Zoom, where you have that ability to share and talk through content that might not be physically on the stand. So being able to make sure that they have all of those things to hand in these sessions is critically important to getting the maximum out of the session. Building that information, that richness of conversation into the quotation and the proposal, being able to provide very quickly a templated sort of landing page or site where it's personalized, that has the proposal, the information around the products or the solution that was discussed and was offered, being able to make that really slick and straightforward for salespeople, making sure the call to actions are really well positioned, that if they want to, they can review the proposal, they can buy now, they can go straight back to that salesperson, which they may well have done at the event if it was over a couple of days. So making sure that all of those things are available to salespeople so that they feel that they're not held back or restricted in any way by not being able to have face-to-face conversations. Product clinics and sales surgeries, again, this is You know, this one-to-one ask the expert approach. Greg touched on this earlier with these sort of the live tours and the one-to-one tours. But when you've got vertical subject matter experts and people want to ask really in-depth questions, if it's a big deal and that they're talking about signing and they want to have some real valuable time with salespeople and with the experts in the industry, then let's get them in front of them. Because they can't meet face to face doesn't mean we can't facilitate those one-to-one sessions. So making sure that we're not forgetting the very top of that pyramid in terms of sales events. The event showroom, the experience center that you have, making sure that if at all possible that sales can utilize those environments, you know, giving them a GoPro and being able to have a live conversation and walk around products to be able to put large scale deals together, which they would have done at events, is still doable. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, our job really to build revenue pipeline now. Many of these tactics can be implemented so quickly and evolved as we start to replicate these events online. There's a necessity for salespeople and product experts to get comfortable in front of the camera. There's no question. So introducing training and familiarity sessions right away are some of the things that marketers can do. Agreeing what those priority tactics are and which ones of those are going to have the biggest impact in terms of the type of events that you would normally have carried out over the next few weeks and months, whether they're your own personal events that you provide as a business to your customers and your buyers, or whether you were attending a larger scale event. There will be various tactics within all of this that we've discussed that will be applicable. So agreeing those priorities, making sure that you set up those familiarity courses, utilize existing digital channels to promote all of this activity. You've already got those digital channels of communication open to your customers and prospects. So make sure you make the most of them, and connect activity to other pipeline activity. Just keep evolving, keep iterating, but a lot of these things can be live very quickly. And just to revisit this slide really, in the fact that we need to, obviously we have a need to reduce human touches and increase our digital touches. Our focus at Bennett is very much to support you guys around events in terms of this presentation. We have another one on Thursday where we're talking about the non-contact sales process and the part of the sales cycle that would normally be face-to-face outside of events that can be supported and adapted. And beyond that, we'll also be looking in the future at customer success and how we support customers and provide excellent experiences online. I think as far as increasing digital experiences and digital touches, digital marketers and marketing agencies are best placed to be able to move into this space, support sales, support customer success. We've been working in the digital space for a lot longer than some of those teams have. So we're in a strong position, I think, to go and help them to adapt to this new normal.